So here we are in Module 1, and as you can see here, we're going to be covering chapters 1 and 2, which is Intro to Social Psychology as well as Social Cognition. So how the modules are set up is you're first given a to-do list, which covers everything that you'll need to be doing in the module. It's a good check sheet to keep handy in case you forget a certain thing that you're supposed to work on or can't remember what was required. This will help you kind of keep track of everything. But then what I do is I go through the objectives. So here's chapter 1 objectives and chapter 2, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in just a moment. I also, again, give you resources that some of these are in the Start Here menu, but some aren't. So again, here's chapter 1 and chapter 2 PDFs of the 13th edition so that you can get started reading in case you don't have your book yet. Module 1 also has article readings. So in addition to these 2 chapters, you'll be reading these 2 articles. The articles come from a book that is a compilation of current and classic research studies in social psych. And they're going to be sort of the basis for our discussion questions, and they relate to the chapters that they parallel that you'll be reading in this module. So you have your chapter readings and you have these separate article readings. Here are your lecture slides for chapter 1 and lecture slides for chapter 2. That gives you all you need to know in terms of the readings and their lecture slides. As you read through the chapter, if you do so in Revel, you can read on the e-text. It will be giving you videos. So as you're reading, say, chapter 1, and a video comes up, you'll see it as you're reading in the chapter, and you'll be able to click into it and get access to the video and watch it. So the videos are sort of like pop-outs that are meant to reinforce certain concepts or classic studies. Social psych is a lot of experimental psychology at its best. So lots of experimental studies looking at social behavior. And so often they'll have a video that highlights a particular study that covers something that you're reading about, and you'll want to watch the video as you're reading. That's the best way to do it, because then it really helps what you're reading to make more sense and sort of come to life. And that's what I would be doing if I was teaching this in person. I'd be showing those videos sort of as I lecture on the content. So that would be my recommendation, is to sort of not store up the videos till the end and just watch them all at once, but to watch them as you're reading. And you'll know where those are at if you're reading in the e-text. It'll show you. Also in Revel, there is the option to click into certain chapters and just watch the videos straight without watching them embedded in the reading. It's a little more trickier to find, but you can do it. However, I definitely just suggest that you read through and watch them as you go. So once you've done all that, once you've acquainted yourself with the lecture slides, you could even print these out, print out the sort of shortened version of the slides where it does like 3 slides per page with the notes on the side. If you print those out, you can have those handy with you when you read the chapters, and then that way you can compare the lecture slides to the chapters and bridge any concepts that you see that are shared. That's definitely going to be where I focus the tests on, is that shared material. So if we skip on down, here is your first discussion. Module 1 discussion covers what you read in both the chapters, chapters 1 and 2, as well as both of those articles mentioned above, which is Article 2 and Article 9. And so you really have to have read everything before you even attempt to dive in to these discussion questions, because when you're responding to these questions, you're going to be giving me many sentences, paragraphs even, to detail your answer and do it in a way that you're citing what you read, showing me where you're getting your information from, okay? So for example, in order to answer this question, you're going to do both the chapter readings and you're going to read this article here. And the question asks, which of these studies mentioned in the article involves the greatest ethical issues? Why? What would be an alternative to the type of deception that was employed? So this article in particular talks about some very unethical studies that were done early on in psychology, specifically in the area of social psych. And they discuss why they were unethical. And they also talk about deception. Deception is used in a lot of social psychological research, and it can actually be used in an ethical way, but there are guidelines in how to do that. And these studies were done before those guidelines existed. So deception was used. It wasn't always used in the best way. And your sort of task in this answering this question is to say, well, how could the study have been changed or deception even used still in a better way? What would have been an alternative to make it more ethical? And so this article here parallels chapter 1 in the main textbook, because in chapter 1 of the main textbook, you're getting an overview of social psych as well as research methods in social psych and ethical considerations in doing research in social psych. So it talks a lot about what then this article sort of highlights more. So you'll start to see how I've selected the articles to go along with the chapter readings very nicely, okay? So you want to be integrating in what you read in chapter 1 as well as what you read in article 2 to answer this question on ethics in social psych. So then once you've finished that question, you're going to go on to the next one, which is based in article 9 and chapter 2, and that's social cognition. So in article 9, it highlights a very classic study done on pluralistic ignorance, which is a concept you're going to be reading about in chapter 2, and looking at the private beliefs a person holds and how sometimes they can be contradictory to their public behavior or their public decision making and opinions that they give, that the two don't always mesh, and that is in essence pluralistic ignorance. And so you're going to be talking about that a little bit, and then you're going to be putting yourself in the shoes of a parent. If you don't want your child to be influenced by pluralistic ignorance and sort of what they perceive norms to be and then how they behave in reaction to those norms, what would you do? Based on what you read in the article, based on what the research shows is and isn't helpful, and is based on what you read in chapter 2, what would you do as a parent if you really knew that pluralistic ignorance was a real concept out there operating in the minds of particularly young people? How might you better prepare your teen to deal with that? So you're going to be explaining your answer using concepts from the text to support your ideas, and remember to cite as you're going any information that you're using from those sources. Again, you can reference the cite as you write document to help you kind of get in the habit of doing that. I realize some of you are not psych majors, and you might not be used to citing in social sciences, which is by APA format. However, it is a must for this class, and you're going to notice if you're not doing it correctly, you're going to get docked points for that. So I give you all the tools you need to be able to cite properly. Make sure you read them over and are aware of what that is and how to do that. So again, I've posted just a reiteration of the discussion board rubric here. This is also in the Start Here menu, but it's here for your convenience. Once you've done all your discussion posts and all your reading and all of that, the last thing to do is take the exam. So the exam is covering chapters 1 and 2. And again, I would recommend that before you attempt taking this exam, because it's final, you can only take it once. It is timed. You'll have 30 minutes. It's 30 questions. It's meant to be challenging. If you were taking this class in person, you would have a 50-question test in 50 minutes. So it really is no different than an in-person class. You're not allowed to use notes or book, and so it is meant to be challenging. That being said, the Revel software that comes with the book has practice exams, and I really recommend you do those practice exams because it will give you a good glimpse into what the questions will look like. And you can time yourself. You can take those practice exams as many times as you'd like, and that will kind of get you on pace, see if you finish in time, give you a good indicator of what you do and don't know. And then it will even spit out feedback on how you did and what kinds of questions you missed. If there were particular content areas that you needed more help with than others, it will tell you that, and then you can go back in and take a look at those before you take your exam. So it's just a way of studying and a way of preparing you for the actual test so that you're all ready to go. I think that is pretty much it. I really recommend going slow through all this material, and the best place to start for an overview on the chapters is here. I give you these objectives. You're not really supposed to do anything with these. You're not answering these and turning these in, but a lot of students use these as sort of a study guide so that they're knowing what they should have mastered, so to speak, for each chapter. So by the time you've read through chapter 1, in essence, you should be able to answer each of these questions, which each question is kind of multifaceted. They're not to be answered in, one sentence. But if you can do that and you have a good grasp of these questions, that is a good indicator that you're ready, that you know the material. So again, if you just look over these objectives for chapter 1, you can see that you're just getting a sense of what is the field of social psych and what kinds of methodology is used. Now, when we say methodology, what's meant by that is how do we go out into the field and study people? What kinds of strategies are used? What designs for research would we employ to answer the questions that we're interested in? Okay, so you're going to get a sort of a wide sense of the different types of studies, and you're going to see these as you're doing the readings. You're going to be exposed to all the psychological research in social psych and the different designs that were employed. And some of this might be a reiteration of intro psych. Y'all have taken intro psych. So it's going to cover, experimental method, correlational design, and it's going to build on that a little bit and dig a little deeper into how it's used in social psychology. So that's really the gist of chapter 1. It's got a little bit of history of where the field started and then, where it is today. But that's the basis there. As we get into chapter 2, which is social cognition, now we start getting into the meat and potatoes of the content, where we start looking at social thinking. So cognition really is just thinking, right? How do we think socially? We think differently when we're surrounded by other people than we do when we're by ourselves. So that's a big sort of concept that's going to be the overarching concept throughout the chapter. But you're going to be taking a look at frame of reference and how we sort of lay out our thinking in the format of schemas, and how we start to see our world and we take in information from our world according to the schema sets that we create. And then you're going to be looking at some different concepts like self-fulfilling prophecy, heuristics, priming, types of processing, automatic versus controlled. And these are all just ways that we process information. It's giving you a glimpse into what our head is doing when we're up against something unfamiliar. So, work through all of these at your own pace, but this will give you a good overview into the chapter before you dive in and start reading. Again, please let me know if you have any questions or you need any help.